a specific client of ours that go from zero to almost $200,000 a month in just a few short months' time. My name is Sasha, and for almost a decade now, I've been helping thousands of new brand founders build and profitable e-commerce businesses. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Hamen Bamba, who's spent over $30 million in ad spend and generated over $120 million in sales in e-commerce alone.
So for this client, we've been working together, looking at the strategies, scaling, and we looked at cost cap as a strategy.
The controls within the cost cap give you that kind of protection where it's like, I'm going to at least be a 3x ROAS. And if I'm not, then it's not going to spend the money.
Yes. They mentioned to me, well, if I was to do this campaign, but I bring in a lot of creatives, do you think there's anything here that wouldn't work? If I was to just pump the creatives and add, let's say instead of one, we launch with 400 creatives.
Oh, wow. So launch with 400 creatives. God. Hamen, what's going on? Tell me about this wild AI strategy you were sharing with me earlier.
So yeah, it's a very exciting strategy. I actually believe that as we progress right now, AI would be the next thing. And we're in a phase where a lot of I think a lot of businesses are getting into AI, and yourself, you're looking at all the structure we're using for our clients. And the goal would be to capitalize on this right now with eCom before kind of, everyone is knowing about this and they're leveraging this. So for this client, as I mentioned to you, we've been working together, looking at the strategies, scaling, and we looked at cost cap as a strategy. And probably you're familiar with cost cap. It's a strategy where you run an ad in Meta, or you put in a limit in terms of cost per acquisition. So this is normally a campaign you use for scaling, but we used it for launching. So that's kind of where we started. And I know that it's normally a very advanced, for any person listening to the podcast, it's a very advanced strategy that we use for mastermind clients that are scaling. But essentially, it's a creative driven. Is this making sense in terms of using a cost cap campaign and adding a bunch of content and keeping the cap limited? In theory, you take a campaign, you tell Meta, I don't want to afford above $50 in ad spend, and you add infinite amount of ads. Is it making sense in terms of the algorithm for you, Joe Structure?
Yeah, so just explain how it's different, for people listening. How is it different from if I was just to go and set up a normal, Advantage Plus campaign or a normal broad campaign? What's the differences in this structure, just high level, for people that might not have heard this before?
Absolutely. So in Meta, you have highest volume, which is a by default campaign. So you create a campaign, you give Meta $20, and Meta will spend the $20. And they're going to do the bidding for you. So essentially, they're going to try to spend it in the auction that they have. Cost cap, same principle. You give Meta 20, but this time you tell Meta, well, I can't afford above, let's say, $50 CPA. So Meta will do the bidding, but this time they're knowing about your target. So it's giving them an information. Problem with this strategy in the past, you set up the campaign, you put in the budget, but Meta doesn't spend it because they don't believe they have the data. But what I was thinking about, and actually credit to the client, because I talked to them before and they're very advanced in media buying. So they went into the data, they looked at everything before. So they're very, I would say, advanced as well. They mentioned to me, well, if I was to do this campaign, but I bring in a lot of creatives, do you think there's anything here that wouldn't work? If I was to just pump the creatives and add, let's say instead of one, we launch with 400 creatives. Think about that.
Oh, wow. So 400 creatives, a launch with 400 creatives.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a reserve we have. And the goal was you create a CBO, you start doing some assets, and then you start just adding creatives in there. 400, he was doing, essentially, initially he did the first batch with 100, and then he started adding based on the winner. So he was just editing and launching every single day. And this campaign just took off. And the budget, by the way, was $2,500 per day in the campaign. And he just started spending right away.
And so the objective there, I guess, thinking about this from I guess bringing it up to a practical level, what you're doing is you're $2,500 a day, CBO, and you're pretty much saying you have enough resources to spend. I'm not giving you a limited amount of cash budget. And then what you're doing is you're setting tight constraints on your cost cap, being I don't want to go above $50 a day, for example, whatever, $50 per purchase. And then you're loading ridiculous levels of creative into I guess it's almost really, really aggressive, rapid creative testing, in essence.
And think about this. The creatives are done 80% statics. So most of the content is done with AI. So he's using AI to create content and then just running them. The moment he like we see a winner. So the moment we see like a good winner, he's doing variation of that as well. So it's really a creative, I would say, a very high capacity, kind of like you pushing more creatives in the ad account, but at the same time, you're leveraging Meta at its best. You're giving Meta all the room with your budget, as you mentioned, and you're also adding infinite amount of creatives. Theory, infinite amount of creatives, very specific budget. So you have actually limit of the budget rather than the creatives. Meta would really thrive in that. Is it making sense in terms of like expansion levels?
Makes sense, yeah. How might I do this? Like, let's say, for example, and before we go there, results wise, so what you're saying is this client, it launched $2,500 per day in spend, 400 creatives, whatever the specific cost cap target was that was kind of baked into the campaign. What happened as far as the results? And then we'll talk about the next thing.
0 to 25K the first month. And then the next month did 67K. And then actually right now we're doing 170K per month in revenue in the first 4 months. And the same campaign is still driving most of the ad spend with just continuum still ad spend, like just adding more creatives. So impressive returns with a 3x multiple.
Wow. So, and so how do you think, like, let's say, for example, this strategy wasn't used, and let's say it was just a traditional kind of launch using like just traditional, like whether it was an ABO or CBO, but it wasn't like such a broad, cost cap. What do you think the results would have been like if it wasn't used like this as far as the launch?
My view on this would be you're going to lose everything if you were to do the opposite. If you have 2,500 and infinite amount of creatives, Meta might spend the full budget right away instead of optimizing it. So we're not like the first period, we didn't spend 2,500 per day. It was just spending a portion, like a small portion. So the view on this would be the opposite would be very dangerous. Might be more aggressive in terms of resources. So the risk of resources is kind of the problem. So we looked at it from perspective of if you have 2,500 a day, you put in infinite amount of creatives, then you're going to be spending the money by the end. So within 7 days, you spend the money. So the risk would be capital being kind of spent and you're lacking the cash flow. That's a big risk. We're avoiding that risk by doing the cost cap.
I guess it's the controls within the cost cap give you that kind of protection where it's like I'm going to at least be a 3x ROAS, and if I'm not, then it's not going to spend the money. Like it kind of like really mitigates for any potential issues there, which is very helpful.
And it's actually just to let you know, one thing I noticed, and we have actually one person that was a client of ours. She's like she was off a little bit. She came back and she's working on her business. And I had recently a call with her, and I was also checking her account. And the moment I looked at her account, she launched it and she's using cost caps, same thing. And I was like, this is very familiar to me. And I was like, can you show me the campaign levels? And I check, and she was running it with, instead of doing we did a low CPA target and then like a high volume, she was doing the max you can afford. So let's say you can afford $100. So she was putting $100 max. That's actually in her case was 70. And she was loading it with not a lot of creatives, just like 20 creatives, I think. And she was getting the best month ever. So, and I was like, how much are we doing? 6K. I think it was 6K in revenue in the last 30 days or so. And the spend was like, it was a 2 ROAS in the last 14 days. And for her, this is new. It's like just a good ROAS. Like she's running with a good break even. And she was like, this is game changer. When I looked at it, I was like, this is the same strategy. So it just, we didn't really use it and calibrate it properly. And that's why I gave her some directive on that to really adjust properly things. But in theory, this is why, like I keep saying this to you, and I know I probably like you heard cost cap, but since we probably started working together, I really am obsessed about cost cap. And I think that our client right now, in the next period, we're testing right now with few, first I would say case studies, but this will be the future. It's going to be using cost cap with a very low target, massive amount of creatives. But obviously, I mentioned this to our clients, you don't want to test this. We test this on a small sample right now that are much more equipped in terms of capital and more advanced in terms of even like sellers. So they already did many brands. It's not the first brand they have. For example, the case study we talked about, this client, he actually is a senior in the market because he builds many brands with us. So it's not the first brand. So that would be something to note. So we're exploring.
What's the downsides of the cost cap? Like, because when we talk about it, it's like it makes so much sense. It's like a no-brainer. Like you program in almost the exact ROAS you want to get out by way of acquisition cost, feeding creatives, and just let it do its work. So it's like, are there any drawbacks? Are there any downsides or things that you look at that you're like, like this is an issue, or like spend throttling, scale throttling. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it doesn't spend, and then you have these days where like no sales or very low sales. Like talk to me about some of the issues or the risks with cost cap.
Absolutely. So think about cost cap. Like there is always a downside. The downside would be we have a campaign that doesn't spend, a campaign that will spend very aggressively, so the opposite, and a campaign that doesn't perform. So the same problems that you have normally with a regular campaign, the only difference, Meta, actually, they're aware of your CPA target. So it's like an insurance policy. So for me, if we're not spending enough, it's probably because we don't have good creatives. So you need to think about it like that. So by default, if you have a cost cap, it doesn't spend, it probably don't have good creatives. If you have good creatives, cost cap will spend. So same problems, but just this time you have an insurance policy.
So it's almost like let's in theory say that you remove the cost cap from the situation and you just purely had a broad audience targeting type campaign set up, and then you rolled a whole bunch of creatives and spent $1,000 a day. There's nothing in the campaign that would tell you have shit creatives, but the money would be spent.
Yes, like you're losing either way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And then with the cost cap, it's like if we can't achieve the target, it's like 99.999% of the time, it's the creative that's an issue. And then it's like we've got this like stop loss that's going to pull the plug and stop your money getting wasted before it just purges it all out. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I will never forget about cost cap. Just think about this. Like 6 years ago, I remember, like, it's just to this day, it's something I will never forget. I was trying with BitCap, which was an advanced strategy as well, where instead of controlling the cost that you want to get, it's you're playing with the auction, which is essentially Meta doesn't tell you even what is the auction. So it's like almost like you're gambling. And I was playing with the bids and I was struggling. And I spent like a year trying to understand like this BitCap thing. And I just was not necessarily performing better than highest volume. And then I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like Meta is kind of not giving us any like information. We just play with the bid, but we never actually know if it's a good bid. And then we end up like with weird results. But then they introduced cost cap, which was, you don't care about the bid. We just want to know how much you want to get to our CPAs. And I remember I set up like 5 campaigns. This is just a test. And I put in very good target for me to CPA. I sleep. Like to this day, I'll never forget this feeling. That's why I was obsessed about cost cap. I wake up and this store was doing like a 1.5 ROAS and it was like 500 in sales, so nothing much. Wake up, like you just 10 a.m., look at the phone, 4K revenue. Like this is not normal. I look at the ad spend, $400. Like that's a 10x multiple. It was just insanely hitting my target. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I started thinking about cost cap as like every account I see, how about we do cost cap? But then I started discovering that you need the creatives. For this account, the creatives were good, but I was just overspending. I was not necessarily playing with the bid cap, not knowing what I was doing. But here, the cost cap changed everything for me. And I was really looking at it since then as a strategy. Should I implement cost cap? How can I implement it? The last like 6 years, I was so obsessed about it.
And how is it like let's say, for example, you're launching a new brand, the brand owner doesn't have, and I guess it's a bit of a loaded question because the idea of the cost cap, it means like you can load $1,000 a day into it, but it's not going to spend it anyway. So it's like, how would you recommend somebody to use this if it's like someone who's got like $100 to $500, $100 to $200, $100 to $300 a day potentially to spend, and they're like, is there a particular ratio of like spend versus creatives? This guy's spending $2,500 and loading 400 creatives. Like, what do those numbers kind of look like from what you've seen?
Yes. So if you're launching right now, you're listening to this, like, hey, I like this is more advanced. So I don't necessarily recommend to jump in cost cap unless you have some coaching that would support that. So for example, if you're part of the mastermind with eCom Capital, we can help you with that. Obviously, our account manager are very expert, like they're familiar with the cost cap, so you're good. But if you're doing this alone, I would really consider getting a coach or someone to help you because cost cap is more advanced. That's the first thing. So don't do it on your own. Just to be clear, it's very risky and it's also very advanced. If you have the right, let's say, tools and you're very confident, I would do this as a side campaign. So you do your highest volume, and that side campaign you can actually consider it your ultimate creative testing. You can just push everything you have. While the highest volume, you can't afford to do this. Do you see the point? One, you have a limited budget. You can't put in like all the creatives you have or you're thinking about. The other one, you can put infinite amount of creatives, but you can control the cost. And you're okay spending, let's say, $500 if you're making 10x returns. So you can do it at a very low CPA with a very high, let's say, volume of creatives, which is what we did initially here. So that's how we can mitigate the risk and kind of have two together. So I would recommend to have two: small budget or go ahead, sorry.
So what you might do is have, for example, like your business as usual campaign, with whatever maybe winning creatives that you have in there, whatever's working well, and you'd like leave that as it is. Let it run with like lesser budget, obviously, like just let it run as like just an auction based campaign, and then separate and have a new campaign that's like purely cost cap, purely designed to test creatives and kind of see what's working at the fastest rate.
And you can load all the creatives in that campaign, and the fear should be less, and you can really control the budget, and you can put a low target, like a CPA of 50% of your desired CPA. So it's not going to spend unless we have a massive winner. So this could be your level of winning. Like let's say if you look at the CPA, your target is 30. If you do 15, you're getting the best winners. The best of the best would actually get spent. The rest won't.
Yeah.
So that's how I would look at it.
Yeah. Very sensible in a lot of different ways. I feel like it's like, especially like in relation to like it just not spending money if it can't get the sales. I've had issues where I've used cost cap before, and then it's just like it just doesn't spend. And so, from your experience, when you have that happen, you decide that immediately as this is a creative issue straight away.
Yes, and I know that like we talked about this in the past. Like I'm actually curious about if right now, like let's say, knowing what we're talking about right now, you're launching a store. Would you consider cost cap in terms of your setup? Would you do the cost cap and highest volume, or you will like just knowing this? I'm curious. Like, what would you do? I'm just positioning you as a strategist here, just to understand how would you leverage the information for any person listening? Because I really want to know what you do. So I'm curious about if I have like right now 20 creators, would you do that, or are you going to be really looking at let's get the volume before even let's say doing that?
Well, I guess it's like if we're assuming that we're going to be doing paid media only, and I can't test those 20 creatives and just like post them all up on, I don't know, Instagram organic or TikTok, and I'm just going paid media wise. Interesting question. Would I use cost cap? I guess
okay, would you use it?
I'm kind of like
the resources. I'm pushing you into a situation where I know you don't have all the tools because you have 20 creatives, and it's not like you're thinking about the person that's just starting out. They don't have the budget. They're questioning everything. So what would you do?
And I'm also like, I'm also aware of like the discussion that I've had beforehand with you about like cost cap, the benefits, the insurance policy, and there's a bias where I'm like, yeah, I would just do that. But I think it would make sense to do like launching immediately using cost cap.
Or you would like to first work with someone that did this before. So probably that's going to be your go-to, because I know you're big on work with someone that could help you kind of gaining time and experience. So that's probably where I think you will do it. If you have someone that could help you.
Oh, I mean, like assuming that I was like launching from scratch and I had no idea, like I probably wouldn't get into the account myself and start setting up a cost cap and like, you know, organizing all the bidding and all those things and all the different kind of like, you know, stop losses, so to speak, of different costs. I probably wouldn't do that. I probably would set up, like not an Advantage Plus, but like, you know, just some broad targeting, and I would just roll, you know, a bunch of creatives into that, and I would just test that to begin with, assuming I was just like starting and I had 20 creatives and just like having a crack. Like I like the idea of that. I guess it depends. It depends on when I'm looking to get a result, and depends on like how much money I've got.
But I'm curious, if I was to put you in a scenario where right now, like tomorrow, you need to launch a store and you have like $1,000 marketing budget, would you test it? It was like, it's going to be like, probably don't want to spend it in just cost cap. I'm curious about limitation on ad spend, and also, you know, you don't have the resources to move creators, because that's sometimes what people are facing. Like, I have $1,000 to invest this month. Let's say it's your monthly budget. Like, would you put it into like highest volume, knowing that also it's going to spend entirely your budget, or you will be like more, let's test cost cap and maybe test like those strategies to avoid spending it?
Right. I mean, if I had $1,000 as a like marketing cap per month, I and then assuming I've got like my creatives that I've developed, I've got $1,000 as like budget to either use for, I don't know, hiring influencers or you're using on paid ads, and paid ads is the channel of choice. I probably would, you know, like it's like if I had such limited resources, I would do one of two things. I would either do like a volume-based situation, and then I would have like the most like aggressive and tight manual kind of scrutiny where I would literally be in the ad account probably morning and evening, maybe morning, midday, and evening, and I'd be doing check after check after check. This thing, this creative, it's gone over KPI, boom, cut. Boom, this, and I would
like
do that type of situation.
Okay, tell me memory of the past. I'm seeing it already. I did this before. Like, hey,
I've done this before too.
Okay. Good memories.
I would set the timer at 6 a.m. and 12 midday and then 6 p.m. and I'd be in that account making those adjustments. So I think if I wasn't to do the cost cap, I probably would do that. And I would be in there like micromanaging the account and just being like a crazy individual in terms of how quickly I'd be cutting and switching creatives. And alternatively, I guess if I didn't do the manual situation and I wanted to just like test creatives without being in the account so much, then I probably would do the cost cap.
So you can see that the moment you put in limitation, like the cost cap would kind of come in as maybe it's a small test we can do on the side. That's my view on it. What if I was to tell you, and you probably know this already, but I'm just like saying this to the audience, that like right now, our client that are scaled between 50 to 100K, that we're actually doubling the budget, they're going with cost cap. Like we have one client right now, he went aggressively and scaled his budget like double with the cost cap because it's giving him confidence, like he can do this more. But I was thinking about if I was in the opposite scenario, would I use a cost cap? The moment I put in limitation in budget, it just came like to like I would do this. I'm like, hey, I'll probably do it. I'll probably do it just to see.
It's very true. It's very true. Like assuming that I didn't have budget constraints and I wanted to test as fast as possible, then like it doesn't become as attractive. But assuming that you said to me like I've got my $1,000 budget per month and I don't really have any more cash to spend, then it's like your money needs to work harder for you. You know what I mean? And so it's like, how can I make it work harder for me? And how can I also prevent downside and loss, by installing that system? So with that constraint, it definitely makes more sense than before. So then I guess like throwing this back in the other direction is like, what's the point of those, volume-based campaigns then? If cost cap seems like it's just the knight in shining armor here to save the day and, protect all of your bank account from ever losing money and all.
Yes, cost cap, save us. But yeah, so probably the point where we do the highest volume is because of one element, speed. And with the highest volume, you can actually, we didn't talk about something here that I think is very valuable. And I know that the audience is they're kind of looking at how can we use this? How can we use this information? So the cost cap is working most of the time because also your website, the landing page, everything is working. So everything's aligned. So if I was to put in a scenario where your landing page is actually not converting, so cost cap is not spending, you're adding more creatives, and you're working with like a bad landing page. Right. So cost cap would not be able to test properly. And when you're starting out, highest volume makes sense because you can see if there's a bad landing page problem. Like you have like a bad landing page, then you can start fixing the add to cart rate. You can fix your funnel. With cost cap, you can't fix anything because it's either going to spend or not. And if it's spending, it's a good target. So you're kind of limited. Is it making sense to show of like the limitation?
Yeah. So it's almost like when you there's a model that they use in the theory of constraints model where they talk about like how to determine what the bottleneck is or what the constraint is of a system. And I always think about like a river, right? A river like running down like a slope. And if you wanted to see like the bottlenecks in the river, for like first things first, you would like run the water down the river, and then eventually you would kind of like lower the water levels until you'd see a big boulder or rock. You know what I mean? Like you'd see that thing, you'd be like, oh, we need to remove the rock out of the river because it's stopping the flow. And so like what we're saying here is like, let's say, for example, I wanted to test that river in terms of water going from one end to the other, which is the same as like a landing page or a conversion on a website, a funnel, right? But I wanted to test it with just like a little bit of water. That's like a cost cap. Like you're testing it with a little bit and it reaches that one rock and then it just stops. And you're like, oh, is it what's happening? Is it working? But you can't really see because like you need to always run the water over the top with that volume-based situation, then wind it back and see where the blocks are and then be like, okay, remove this, fix this. And then once it's been improved, you run that cost cap over the top of it and it will be really quite smooth and efficient. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's actually exactly what I was looking at. I was like, why would you do both? You would do both because one will not show you the problem in your funnel. just going to show you the ideal scenario. But the other one is a good for creative testing and budget management. So I would say both are good. That's why I would recommend any person logic to start with an A+ campaign. I still stick to that. Like A+ campaign, don't do this structure unless you're working with a media buyer or someone that really specializes in cost cap. And by the way, not every media buyer out there, they're specialized in cost cap. It's almost like you're looking for a specialist, like a specific kind of doctors. So you need to really look for this specialist in cost cap. Because I probably would say 8 out of 10 media buyers, they don't even understand how to manipulate cost cap, just to let you know.
It's not a commonly used strategy. Like it's not every day that you will speak to a media buyer or someone who does like any form of media strategy and they talk about cost cap. Usually it's like get the creatives, ABO, CBO, whatever it might be, top of funnel, middle of all of that type of stuff. It's like those are the very generic terms that all the marketers use. But in terms of like the cost cap thing, it's not terribly often used. Is there a finessing of the like the sweet spot of like, let's just say, for example, I'm setting up a cost cap campaign. I imagine like the two biggest levers you have to pull is like your creatives. So obviously you want to make sure that they are good, and you've got volumes and volumes and volumes of different creatives, different environments, different avatars, all those good things for the creatives. And then the other lever you really have to pull under the provision that you already have your landing pages converting and they're working, right? The other thing is that the different kind of caps that you have. Maybe it's like $30, maybe it's $40, maybe it's $50. Like those are the other levers. And I guess what you're looking for there is the alignment between this creative style and this particular kind of like whatever creative setup matching with that particular cost bracket to get that flow cut through. Is that right in understanding that?
Explained cost cap in the most advanced manner that probably I've never seen before. Like, hey, that's like, I've been doing this for like 6 years, just cost cap alone. So you just really explained it. That's a way. That's actually my view on it. Like what you just mentioned is exactly what I would look at from a cost cap. That matching the levels of the cost cap with the target with the landing page. That's how you can make it happen. That's how you scale businesses fast with cost cap. That's actually the main challenge, is figuring out those gaps.
Yeah, because it's just that alignment. You know what I mean? Because I imagine like a particular creative that might resonate with a particular avatar might pay less or more for the product, and you're just trying to get that matching sequence of like these creators with this particular cost, and then once you get those lined up and syncing, they should in theory be able to just like produce massive volumes of cash for you. So interesting model. So I guess in theory, I and to kind of like close the door on this a little bit more, launching both of assuming you have no conversion data and you've got a brand new store, brand new business, it probably would make more sense to go not with a cost cap campaign, to broad, massive amount of volume, to push volume through, find the gaps, find the issues, optimize your conversions, optimize all your cart pages, et cetera, et cetera. Once that's done and you have good, strong conversion rate metrics, then you might double back around and then install a cost cap situation.
Yes, that's actually what I'm doing right now with our clients. Like the majority, 80%, or 90%, that's what we're doing. But as I mentioned, the more advanced clients that we have, that are already senior, they already launched brand before, they're launching a new brand, and they're using a valid structure. So we trust our structure in terms of landing page, we trust our structure in terms of creatives, we even trust like the business owner in terms of operation and budget. In that scenario, we can actually create this model. Well, in my opinion, that's going to be the next thing, because the more we have data on this, and right now we're building data, the more ecom capital is seeing this as like the easy way to launch, the more we're going to offer strategies where we're going to do the landing page for you that will be actually aligning everything right away. And all you have to do is just creatives.
Mm. Yeah, we just had our town hall meeting. I don't know if you were on that one just a moment ago. I think you were on a meeting, a coaching call or something, but it's insane seeing some of the stuff that we're doing across the company and some of the results and some of the brands we're building. And wow, this Black Friday, I'm kind of nervously scared for the results we're going to push through the community. And the next 12 months, I'm like, wow, there's going to be some seriously amazing brands. I have a target that I'd like to build next year, 40 8-figure brands. That's my kind of target. So we got some work to do, and oh wow, I'm pumped. I'm super pumped.
Yeah, and I think cost cap, in my opinion, would be is going to be one of the drivers in the next period, because it's an insurance policy. Like, there's no bad thing on having Like it's never a bad idea to have Meta knowing about your targets, in my opinion, because they're going to support it.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Very valuable session, Hamen. I think this is like short, sweet, tactical. And I hope if you're listening to this at the moment, regardless of where you're up to, if you're in that stage where you have proven funnels, proven landing pages, you can use this to kind of bake into your system. Obviously, you might need some help and support with that. That's kind of what we're here to do. If you're in that new launching phase, definitely go for more of a higher volume situation, and then perhaps add this into the mix later. But hope you enjoy this episode, Hamen. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and I'm pumped to also dive into, because I think the other piece to this that we didn't touch too much was the creative aspect, as far as the development, all of the AI creative. So I'm really excited to dive into that and actually have a discussion around creative development, AI kind of like creatives, and it's challenging because people know their AI, you know what I mean? And so it's like, how good of an AI image can you get? And also thinking of the client that you mentioned in terms of like these crazy results, like to think that you could do that with AI creatives and then get those results. Like imagine if they were real human creatives. Like imagine how much better that they would be. It's like, it's wild to think that. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's exciting. And right now, even just in terms of creatives, we're sharing the mastermind ways to navigate creatives with AI, and also how to get actually creatives to work in terms of strategy. So we're working on that. So it's really exciting because we're looking at AI, but also, as you mentioned, human content, but AI still would be, in my opinion, a big driver in the future.
Absolutely. Very good. If you enjoyed this, let us know either in the comment section below, or if you have perhaps a business case scenario you'd like us to map out and break down on the podcast, feel free to send us an email at support@ecomcapital.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, Hamen, it's always a pleasure, my friend, and I'll see you soon.
Following the pleasure. See you soon.